Cyberpunk 2077 offers an open world filled with dopamine-inducing mechanics, weapons, and bugs. The challenge I've created for myself could be considered so daring that it would even stump some of the world's greatest minds like Jewel, the mightiest musician. The question at our hand is, can Cyberpunk 2077 be only completed using the starting pistol? Some rules will need to be presented on how this ass-clenching challenge will be achieved. No weapons but the starting pistol may be used. No weapon upgrades or armor upgrades or even body upgrades will be permitted during this run. Grenades and hacks will be permitted. Our journey begins with the Street Kid intro, where we are met with the modern art equivalent of a human being anime protagonist, V, a self-employed chiropractor who lends a helping hand to an 80s Slav in stealing a car that would certainly bring us riches beyond our wildest imaginations. But during our escapades, we're rudely interrupted by a Jackie Wells, the supporting anime waifu, to our protagonist with a futuristic haircut.
Look at the top of his head!
In the 60 FPS guaranteed T-posing but functioning cutscene, the history between Jackie and I is made, which after we're handed the controller and finding a high-value woman. This is also where we're introduced to the squirt gun we will be using for the rest of the run. As my vascular veins rush with testosterone, I align my chiseled crosshair to the head, pulling the trigger, and announcing our existence to the 12 other men present within this apartment complex. Securing our target, Jackie and I decided it was time to return, but just like Compton, a surprise drive-by delayed our return. Unluckily for our scrumptious bunch of misfits, my character was still placed in a timeline where I was still able to do damage, which resulted in a deep pounding, leaving their scrotums left with nothing but regret. Once returning to our apartment, V was finally able to lay his body in a position which would not risk brain damage. Starting our new day, we met with the notorious night fixer, Dexter Deshawn, offering us a part in a heist which would significantly increase our status and bring rewards of such as Katowice 2014 stickers. With this readily prepped information handed to us, a plan would need to be set in place on how we would be tackling Night City. The Unity pistol, handgun skill tree, and the grenades will be the acting saviors in our run. The Unity power pistol offering a base damage of 69 per hit. With no upgrades to the weapon, it will not be sufficient to power through this run alone. But one way in which we can increase our odds of success will be through upgrading the handgun skill tree. This will allow us to take our enemies by the sphincter, expanded through the sheer amount of power we will be able to expend. With the chosen difficulty of very hard, grenades will do significant amount of damage, which will provide a lot of value in this run. Our next task from Dexter involved us in meeting with Maelstrom, a gang that excelled in Amazon dropshipping operations, which had a droid we were looking for. Upon reaching the walking microwaves, a peaceful option was possible, but because of our masculine exuberance, I laid out Royce and began expunging my load at these half-functioning Toyota Hyundais. This section inadvertently decided to spike in difficulty, with random combustions, constant puckering of 50 plus damage, yet my determination of success was unmatched. I persevered through the Maelstrom facility to achieve my six-legged Roomba. After we met up with the inverse prison break squad, the plan was set. The big day was upon us. Me and Jackie pulled up with the single intent of stealing the chip. We sneaked inside Yorno's suite, grabbed an all-power USB drive containing secrets of the Slytherin. Upon the realization of that we're going to get screwed during this mission, me and Jackie performed some escape room antics, to which after we leaped for our lives to escape the hotel. With the disappearance of my chosen weapon, the only thing I could do is
run.
Luckily for me, my parkour abilities were able to single-handedly net me the escape of the century. Jackie decided to take a permanent nap in the car, which left me to deal with Dexter. The vibe was weird. I just wanted my reward and leave, but rather, the reward I received was a fiery bullet. With my newly found ability of death, I transcended to my final form of Johnny Sins, aka Johnny Silverhand, aka Keanu Reeves. This one-armed amputee proved that fame can provide happiness, but blowing up the Arasaka Tower can. Johnny's mission also requires us to use a weapon that isn't a starting weapon, which could be considered an automatic fail, but we keep going. Once facing death yet again, but in a different life, V is reawakened to the closest thing that he would call home. We're saved by Takemura, who makes us use something that we did not consent to. To save his life and eyes, we drove through the empty night city, fighting off cyber ninjas, but after a rough landing, Takemura had to take me to a doctor. With the newfound knowledge that Keanu and I have become one, we center our focus on how we can remove the chip and save our limited life. Our first step would be helping Judy in finding Evelyn, as she had prior information about the job we took. We visited a nice establishment which provided therapeutic sensational experiences, but we were here on business. Through a form of persuasive communication, we established a possible lead. This tight-bodied twink was initially resistant to sharing information, but after showing some brute force, we got our final destination for Evelyn's location. Reaching Evelyn's location, I was left in awe by the sheer number of enemies present throughout the building. Ammo started to become a scarce commodity, but what became the bane of my existence was consistent hacking. Each hack resulted in a pause in the gameplay, as hiding was the best option. Slowly killing each enemy proved to be the best path forward, rescuing Evelyn, and I learned that the Voodoo Boys are our next target. We shifted focus towards them where I met Placide. He had answers and I had questions, but nothing would be answered by him till I would knock out the Grand Imperial Mall for the Voodoo Boys. The Grand Imperial Mall was equivalent of wiping with one-ply toilet paper. The abuse I endured during this part was the equivalent of what I suffered from my uncle as a child. Right off the bat, I was met with roided sponge monkeys soaking my bullets. Due to the damage and ammo shortages, my initial approach was to sneak past and put myself in a position where I can dish out damage and heal safely. After ringing out my first shot, I realized the mistake I made. After several deaths and restarts, I was finally able to vanquish the population of enemies within the Grand Imperial Mall. Yet there was one final wall. Muscle Mommy aka Matilda K. Rose proved to be an impenetrable opponent. A large amount of health, lack of ammo, and healing. What could go wrong? I found finite tech through the grilled YouTube. I learned of a technique which was mandatory for the success of the run. Shooting her in the back, which would disable Matilda's ability to heal back her health. Completing Placide's mission resulted in a quick flatline from the Voodoo Boys, but V's ability to resurrect from the chip started to become quite a useful feature. Upon returning to Placide, to his shock of us still being alive, we were granted to a meeting with Overwatch's downfall Brigitta. She introduced us to the hot trend of ice bats, in which we were also granted a meeting with Alt, Johnny's dead girlfriend, in an intense scene in the back room. Alt provided vital information that no matter what we do, we're heading for certain death, and Johnny taking full control of V's body. Our next step was finding an individual who had deep knowledge about the chip. Hellman was our next target. Once awakening from the ice bath, we chose to leave peacefully as the sheer burnout from the Grand Imperial Mall started to wane on my mental health. Our next step forward was meeting with Rogue and setting up a trap for Hellman, but Rogue needed our help first. Even though I was terminal, she was not in the market for a Make-A-Wish. Panem, the cutie of Cyberpunk 2077, needed our help to retrieve her vehicle and honor her deal with Rogue. A trap was set for the individual that stole Panem's vehicle, and with the pitiful damage that I was able to output, proved to be no match for these San Francisco residents. An additional supportive element to these missions with NPCs is that they're able to output significantly more damage than what I'm capable of throughout this run. The strat was to poke enemies down till Panam shot and finished each aggressor. With being Panam's #1 simp, I decided to follow her to defeat Nash. Dread overcame my body though as soon as we landed in the cave due to the constant cover shooting mixed in with spam healing. Each hit felt like stepping on a Lego piece that seeped deeper into my foot. Nash provoked my autism by constantly dodging. The only way for damage to be done was through poison grenade. With Panam's cute date being done, I was ever closer towards acquiring Hellman. Like the anime of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, we drove through the desert and blew down an Arasaka ship carrying Hellman. Once arriving at the crash site, the section felt a lot easier as each enemy was split up and I was able to narrow down my damage. I was able to save Mitch, yet Hellman was able to escape during the commotion. Following Hellman's trail led us to an empty 7-Eleven gas station filled with several amounts of guards, varying in weapons, drones, and armor thickness. Following the same strategy that raised us from a low beta male to a high value man, the simple strategy involved us hiding behind a rock and picking each enemy off with our hand cannon while Panam rained down hell. Once Hellman was finally in our hand, we drove into the sunset, reminiscing on better moments. Hellman proved vital information to my upcoming death. We brought Takamura into the picture, who needed some alone time with Hellman in this dusty-ass hotel. Upon returning to Night City, Takamura informed us of an upcoming celebration that will bring us a chance to meet with Hanako, the daughter of Yorinobu. But before we could engage in the parade, Takamura needed to hack a float. Takamura told us initially to take out 3 snipers, and to take out a peaceful netrunner who was overseeing security. But we were rudely interrupted by Hanako's guard, Oda. Oda was a sizable challenge, as my reaction time was not able to compete with Oda's ability to dive bomb me. While also healing, he takes not enough damage and constantly pepper me with mini missiles. Realization that my pistol damage was too low, and whenever Oda would take the high ground, I would throw a severe amount of nades to stagger. This gave me an opportunity to x12 my damage by headshotting him. With Oda defeated and Takamura showing us on the best way to pick up a woman in this futuristic dystopia, I left the parade to meet up with them in a super secret location which will definitely not be infiltrated only minutes after I arrived there. With soldiers piling up on the building, Takamura and I ended up being separated, but like in my favorite anime, The Fastest and the Furious, Takamura was family. My motivation quickly dissolved as this section proved to be a tougher prospect than initially planned. Several amounts of resets and Takamura rescued, we escaped with our hands clenched between each other's butt cheek. While we may have reached the final of the game, we will not succumb to the fate of the corpos. Originally, a Panam ending was considered to me as the best possible ending, but quickly after spending 2 hours finishing the side quests of Panam, I realized that the Rogue ending would be a rather fitting end to our journey. With severe burnout holding us together, I scaled the Tower of Arasaka as Johnny. Rogue died, we destroyed Atom Smasher, concluding this journey as the Night City Legends. With that being said, Cyberpunk 2077 can be completed with only using the starting pistol. Kinda.